what nearly ran down Felix was the Reichsguard. That was Karl Franz's personal bodyguard he sent into the fray.
Yeah. It's like, these are terrorists who are threatening my life!
Yeah. Unfortunately, they made the mistake of trying to fight Gottrick Garrison, and that is a one-way ticket to hell for anyone involved.
One mark will be vehicle 6. Comprised of warrior women.
Hi friends, I'm LJ Jarvis, and welcome back to Louis Jarvis Show.
Before we start the show, let me thank you for clicking onto this video. If you'd like to see more videos like these, why not subscribe and hit the bell button so you'll never miss an episode. Now, on with the show. Greetings everyone, welcome back to On Air with Jarvis, the podcast of all things Warhammer and general stuff I find of interest. Join us today is the YouTuber PancreasNoWork. How's it going, sir?
I'm doing very well. I'm very excited to be here, and very excited to talk about the potential topics that came up. You have suggested, as well as anything else that may come up. I'm gonna say I love talking about Warhammer.
Who doesn't? And that's why I did the show, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I'm doing good. It's actually my birthday today, so I'm still trying to accept the fact that I'm 26.
Yeah, that's I found that once I got out of college that they just kind of started coming, and it's like, oh, good, I'm just getting older now.
But then it comes to the fact that you just accept it and it's not as scary anymore. Because, you know, I think... Yeah, because I think... so sorry, what?
Oh, sorry. Say it's another day. The number just goes up once a year.
Yeah. But there are benefits, so, to getting older. It's like, you know, no matter what people say, I'm more happier being like in my 20s than how I was back in high school. Because I think too many people romanticize their years in high school.
Oh yeah, I would always say, you know, these are the happiest days of your life, like the stuff. I'm like, well, I mean, I do miss not having to work for a living, but I'm still in school working for a living. So I don't know. I think I definitely agree with that. I think the 20s are going a lot better for me than the teens.
Yeah, because being in high school, you're filled with the most narcissistic, petty people you would ever meet in your entire life.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, there are definitely some people in high school I could do without in my daily life. And now I'm out of high school, so hey, look at that.
Yeah, it's just, but the thing is that when I'm at lunch at the garage, when I try to go to like a Dairy Queen or McDonald's during like the school year, it's like I'm filled with like bunch of these people that look like they're too young to be adults, but they're too old to be children. And it's like it's this weird combination of being in between. And it's just the annoyance of them being there. That's like, just go away. You people remind me of like the worst things imaginable.
I not only worked at a Dairy Queen in high school, but I was briefly a high school teacher. So I get that.
Oh.
Especially, I'd come in and be like, God, I remember high school. You used to be thinking like, I'm basically a grown up. I'm an adult, and then I would walk in every day for teaching and be like, I'm dealing with all these damn children.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe I thought I was an adult at that age. You are all children.
Yeah, it's like I was going to be a teacher once, but then again, I was like, I do not have the patience for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I found kids weren't too bad. I mean, maybe I just lucked out and didn't get too many kids that were just too obnoxious, but whole lot. No one mentioned all the stuff that went into teaching, so it just wasn't for me.
Yeah. But yeah, so everyone would know you from these insightful videos that you make on 40K and other subjects. And I really do mean that you make these really insightful videos on the stuff that you do. But for the people in the... Yeah, no problem. But for the people in the back who may not know you, who may be Pancreas? Just for the audience in the back.
Of course. PancreasNoWork, or Colin. The channel will be PancreasNoWork. If you couldn't couldn't tell from the name, I am a type 1 diabetic, and I make, I guess the mainline little series I do is a do or don't. I look at an army, and all these factions have plenty of lore behind them, plenty of rules behind them, so I look at them and try and be like, hey, AOS, 40k, when the Old World comes out, that'll go to the lineup, and every now and then, Total Warhammer be like, hey, from a lore perspective and a rules perspective, what might you like about this army, and what might you not like about this army? Because everyone's got some pros and cons going for them. Mm-hmm. So I try and, from a beginner's perspective of like, hey, this isn't there's other channels that do lore a lot deeper. There's other channels that do tabletop a lot deeper, but I try and give like a beginner perspective of, if you're just looking at this army, what might draw you to it and what might push you away from it.
Mm-hmm. And these are very insightful videos too, from what I've seen and from what I've saw previously. Your video about Space Wolves, it actually inspired a conversation piece with me and Badger. So that was certainly a fun time.
I would like to stress that I do exaggerate a bit for the videos. I'm not a fan of the Space Wolves.
I'm not either. So
I'm also not here to personally judge people for liking Space Wolves. I just, as much as I do try and genuinely analyze the lore and stuff, I'm also mainly here to get a chuckle out of people.
Of course. But I think you do like bring the point home that the Space Wolf have, all these opportunities to make a really cool Space Marine chapter, right? Games Workshop had like this huge palette for what they could do, but they never took advantage of it. And when you look into it, the Space Wolves are just horribly uninspired.
Yeah, it's like they're Viking cosplayers in space. Yes. I wish they were a bit more real Viking, sailing out, exploring, stuff like that.
Yes.
Instead, they just kind of punch the Inquisition in the face and
them just giving up.
Like that's the end of the story.
Yeah. It's I think one friend told me this. It's like the opportunity for them is like wide as an ocean, but the actual material of it is shallow as a puddle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff you can read about them, and then all those storylines and events just kind of peter out. I guess there is Ragnar Blackmane, who I will admit I have not read his books, but beyond that, everything just seems to be pretty, like you said, wide as an ocean, shallow as a puddle.
Yeah, and I think one of the most interesting ideas that you made in that video is that I can never say their name for the life of me, but it's when they were like Viking mercenaries for the Byzantines.
Oh yeah, the Varangian Guard. They were the royal bodyguards of the Emperor.
Yeah, so imagine like Space Wolf bodyguards for like, Farseers or the Ethereals. That sounds like a very cool idea, and it's like, how come they never gone with this idea?
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool, and I think they don't even necessarily need to be loyalist Space Wolves. Could just be a squad that was like, I think I'm done here. I think every chapter has a couple bad eggs, as it were, and they could be that could be the Space Wolves. Like, you know what? Not turning to chaos, but I'm out of this Imperium. I'm done dealing with the Inquisition. I'm gonna go babysit an Ethereal.
Or it's like these could be like excommunicated Space Marines after the whole Months of Shame thing, because there ought to be consequences from that. Because like you make like a feudal war against the Inquisition, and you think they're just going to leave you alone afterwards.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like after reading about it, I was hoping it's like you'd think the Inquisition would be redirecting orcs to Fenris every other week, but it seems like that everything just kind of ended with the Months of Shame. Like, we're gonna keep our eyes on you, and then it's like, are you?
It's like, really?
It doesn't seem like you did anything.
Because like you guys almost wiped out an entire Space Marine chapter because they were going to complain about you to the High Lords. Celestial Lions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's like, I get the Space Wolves are a first founding chapter, but they declared open war on the Inquisition, and
but they won because they're just that good.
They're just that good. You know, I mean, and again, it's like I said in the video, go Space Wolves for, you know, defending those who fought in Armageddon and lived on it. I don't have an issue with that. I'm always a fan when the Space Marines stand up for the little guy. But you know, it's 40K. Happy endings are not should not be easy to come by, and I don't think the Space Wolves quite earned the happy ending with that one.
Yeah, I think it's also the obvious favoritism towards the Space Wolves because, and this is something I think Badger brought up, is that they're the Mary Sues that everyone accused the Ultramarines of being.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the thing with there was the Codex 5th edition Ultramarines that is what really sent home the Ultramarines are the greatest of them all.
But they
I
are.
think of course they are. You'll get no dissent from me for Ultramarine superiority, but like a lot of the reputation with that was because they just what do you do it? Control F, like the word finder, and replaced all instances of Space Marine with Ultramarine or Ultramarine with Space Marine, or something like that. So it was because it was a last second rewrite. It just made the Ultramarines look really good. Whereas the Space Wolves intentionally got all that rather than just a quick patch job.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
At least from my understanding of it.
Yeah. But then came the Primera stuff, and it's like it's done a bit worse for Space Wolves because it's more like they don't even have pelts anymore.
It's Primaris as a whole are so I don't know how to feel about them. And
I like them. I like them, but or like the other chapters is more like they could use some more flavor up, which I think they did well for Black Templars, right?
Mm-hmm.
But immediately it's like, unless there's like conversion, most of the time, if you're doing something like Space Wolves or Blood Angels, it can be just, you know, Ultramarines painted red because it can just be like that. But
oh yeah, they haven't quite gotten around to really giving them the flair each chapter has.
Yeah, though with the exception of like Black Templars, of course, because I think they did a really good job on that one.
Oh yeah, what's the one I forgot?
Sword Brethren?
Forgive. Yes, thank you. You knew exact. Thank you for knowing exactly what I was talking about. It's that's a quite nice model they have. The Black Templars have shined, but like you said, yeah, a lot of them need their the flavor because even with like the Death Company, it's like, well, I know the lore. It is still the Death Company, but it's also kind of just
that
Black Ultramarines in terms of what they look like.
Yeah, it's like, wow, that's been uninspiring.
It's kind of overall one of the reasons I'm not as into the Space Marines as I am other factions, especially Eldar, my beloved, is they do. I mean, I don't need to say the Space Marines have a lot of models. The sky is blue. Did you know? But
as it should be. All roads lead to Rome.
Do you mean all roads lead to Ultramar?
Did I stutter?
But it's just like the silhouette. Like if from a distance you put two Space Marine minis on the tabletop, it's like, well, those are definitely Space Marines. But you could put two midis from other factions on the table, and they're immediately a lot more visually distinct.
Mm-hmm.
But I have my biases against the Marines. God damn you, Marnius Calcar! Stop 1v1ing avatars of Cain.
But his name is literally Augustus, or at least as one of his names. So it's like, of course, the illustrious one will have the upper hand.
Of course, yeah, and he is an Ultramarine, so he is naturally better than everyone by default. I don't know. What can I say? I think Cain needs a reputation fix.
Mm-hmm. But from across your YouTube videos and all that, I think it's obvious that your favorite character of all time in Warhammer is Karl Franz, if I'm right.
Oh, you are 110% correct. The Prince and Emperor of Reichland has a special place in my heart.
Would you say he was your gateway into like Warhammer, or what would it be?
I would, because the way I got into Warhammer was actually my friend bought a graphics card, and for whatever reason they were doing some promotion or something or whatever. It came with a copy of Total Warhammer 1.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I've liked the Total War franchise since I was a kid. Like one of the earliest games I remember playing is Rome Total War, both the medievals. So I've loved Total War since I was a kid, but I actually initially wasn't too sure how much I would like Total Warhammer, because I like the historical aspect and all that. I wasn't sure if I would like the fantasy stuff, but he has no interest in strategy games, and he knows I like Total War, so he's like, "You want this?" I was like, "Yeah, I might. If he's just gonna give it to me, I might as well try it out." And then I fell in love with it. So Karl Franz, the Empire, and fantasy as a whole is what started this whole mess, as it were.
Of course, and when I was actually getting into Warhammer, like both 4K and fantasy during that time, seeing Karl Franz's model, that made me think, wow, Warhammer Fantasy is really cool. Because I think it's his Griffin too that sold me into it, or sold me into liking him.
Oh yeah, Deathclaw is
yeah.
I've got that mini that I've been slowly painting for a while now, and he is a glorious sight to behold.
Yeah, I think it's more of how they designed the Griffin, and especially how they made the lion part into a tiger. It's like that little simple change makes it just visually distinctive, and it kind of gives them character.
Oh yeah, and I think that's a part of why I like Warhammer a lot, because obviously there's a lot of outside influences Warhammer takes, be it from history, mythology, or a whole lot of like Lord of the Rings, Tolkien. But Warhammer always has some that gives it that unique flair, and I think you said it perfectly with that little, like, the Deathclaw has the tiger stripes and all that. It makes him stand out, distinct, and it really makes you know that you're looking at something that's a Warhammer property, Warhammer character, and it gives it that flair.
Yeah, especially to like Karl Franz's armor itself. It's very familiar to German, but almost done in a way where it has a bit of fantasy into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's it's the Holy Roman Empire. You got the German armor design and the influence, but it's also it's been Warhammered up a bit, and he's got the griffin thing on the top of his helmet. It's covered in skulls, and of course he wields Galmaraz. So it's definitely as Warhammer does, it's taken to the extreme.
Mm-hmm. And there's something I actually tweeted about online that I was wanting to get your opinion about. Is that, do you think he should have the title of Kaiser, or do you think he should have had the title of Kaiser because of the obvious connections and all that? Just in in the context of would it be historically maybe not accurate, but more like something fitting for him? It's kind of like with the whole idea of like Catherine and Kislev, how she has the title of Tsar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what do you think?
I personally don't, because it's based around more the Holy Roman Empire rather than united the German Empire.
Okay.
Once it was properly unified and the Kaiser came into being as is like properly. I think maybe if they ever if they advanced the storyline in a way that didn't blow up the setting, and the Empire moved on from the Holy Roman Empire to something more resembling modern Germany, or I say modern, more like the early 1900s, late 1800s Germany. If it moved on to some more like that, then I think it should maybe could have been Kaiser, or some slight variation to make it not just Kaiser, but I think as it is in the setting where it ended, I do think Emperor is a bit better of a title.
Okay, I can get that. And actually, from that, Voldemort, he would actually reply that saying that how can there be a Kaiser if there was never a Caesar in that world? And then someone replied, "Au contraire, how is there a Tsar if there was no Caesar. So you see what I mean?
Yeah, because Tsar is just the pronunciation. It's just the translation of Caesar. So, that is a good point. Although I wonder if you dug deep enough, if there might be some in the some lore for Tylea, the Italian equivalent in the Warhammer Fantasy world. If there's something like that, I know there's the Riemann Republic rather than the Roman Republic. I believe there is in Tylea. So maybe if I dug a bit deeper, there might be some to that.
Yeah, of course. And me and a friend of mine, actually, we were talking about this in a podcast, actually, a book club about Troll Slayer, right? And yeah, so we were talking about the first short story and how it sort of mentions why Felix left Altdorf and why he joined Gotrek, being that, of course, there was the window tax riots going on. Franz charging every citizen for having a window.
Yep, there was it's. I laugh at that because on the one hand, that is very in character for the time period of Warhammer Fantasy, like early, late Renaissance, early Industrial Revolution starting, and that that's the kind of stuff that would historically be happening. But it makes me giggle because it's like, what is the kickstart of this epic fantasy adventure that's like 18 books long? Oh, it's window taxes.
Because if you want to get someone riled up, it's taxes.
I mean, hey, that taxes piss everyone off, so it's a good a motivation as any.
And it's also very fitting that they have this protest at his mansion with all his like petitions and all that, and his answer is to send in the cavalry.
Oh yeah, not even just the cavalry. That was, at least for what nearly ran down Felix, was the Reichsguard. That was Karl Franz's personal bodyguard. He sent to the fray.
Yeah. It's like, these are terrorists who are threatening my life.
Yeah, unfortunately, they made the mistake of trying to fight Gotrek Garrison, and that is a one-way ticket to hell for anyone involved.
You see, I don't think that dwarf is going to do much in his life.
He's going to do plenty. Unfortunately, he's never going to get what he wants because he just wants to die. He's as has been made mention, the best and worst slayer to ever live.
That's a perfect way of describing him.
Poor guy. The planet. They say that the planet broke before the guard did. Poor Gotrek, just the planet blew up and he survived.
Yeah, literally, I remember this quote from Realmslayer, the audio drama, and it was so perfect hearing him say, I swore to die in battle, but outlived a world. It's like, wow, the gravity of him saying that. It's like, wow. And I didn't read any of the Gotrek books before then, right? So, but I sort of knew like his story, like I knew the character. So like him saying that, it's like, wow, the gravity of him saying that.
Yeah, it's very tragic in a rather untraditional way because like you said, he swore to die in battle, and yet he's such a good fighter that the world ended around him, and it just didn't stick. Realmslayer, I've started listening to Realmslayer. I think I'm at the part I'm a little bit after where Gotrek sees the statue or the Temple of Teclis, and says, "I think I figured out what's wrong with this world," which was really funny. But it's oh God, what was I going to say? Pardon me. I actually haven't read the last 15 pages of the final Gotrek and Felix book, just Slayer, because I know that once I go, I like pretending to myself I still have more Gotrek and Felix ahead of me, because I know that once that's gone, no more Felix in my life, and that's rather depressing.
Who lives, who dies, who tells your story, in a sense.
Indeed. It's the poor Gotrek's poor rememberer is Felix being Felix Jaeger is pain.
Though I guess the whole point of me bringing that up about the window tax and all that is that so my friend of mine, Hubert, he says that was probably old lore with Karl Franz doing the whole window tax thing during the time of when these books were being written. Would you say that's old lore, or do you think that's still something thing for someone like Franz? Because what I'm thinking is that even though he's like this very big character, he's the fighter against chaos, the slayer of orcs, the prince of Altdorf, and emperor of the empire. He's all these things, yet he's still also a politician. So he still has to do things like, charging people for windows because he has to pay for the military somehow.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely old lore. It's like I think Troll Slayer is from the 90s, so it's definitely old. It's just a matter of,
is it dated?
Yeah, that's I personally don't think it's dated. Just like you said, he's still a politician. Man's got to do taxes. Like that's you can't get around that when you're the leader of a country. You got to do taxes. And I mean, if I read the short story actually released through Total War, going through the Karl Franz's election to the seat of emperor, there's a whole lot of political maneuvering he does. So I don't think it's inherently against against his character. And he even one of the voice lines in Total War that I like is he's like, "Hey, I'm the emperor. I've done some pretty messed up stuff." I think genuinely he is a good guy and he's trying to do his best, but it's still a Warhammer setting. Sometimes
you gotta be a dick.
Sometimes you gotta be a dick. Sometimes you gotta do the things people aren't going to be big fans of.
Sometimes you have to send in the cavalry against a 20-year-old because he a dropout college kid.
So sometimes you got to run down a college dropout with the Praetorian Guard of the Empire. So just you got to do what you got to do.
It's like it's a necessary evil.
Mm-hmm. Although, if you really want to talk about old Karl Franz lore, and one of the old Warhammer Fantasy roleplays, he died.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It was. I think I'd have to read what the scenario was. I only glossed over it, but the whole thing is about Karl Franz died. So that obviously got retconned.
Yeah, it's one of the Games Workshop later changes that I think was good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm just gonna pretend that didn't happen.
You know what? That was in a role play supplement. We're just gonna brush this one aside. He's far too marketable.
Or it's like, we can't have Chaos win against the Imperium of Man because it's not going to be that marketable.
Yeah. So we need to keep Abaddon stalled at Cadia for 20 years.
Or then have Gilliman summon the Primaris Marines who've been under sleep for 10,000 years.
Oh, yeah, I guess Call just had those sitting in a basement until it was time to go.
And there was no other time within the Imperium of Man where they might need Primaris Marines.
Yeah, it's like, I get Cadia falling in the Great Rift. Definitely one of the worst case scenarios, but you're saying there was nothing short of that was worth bringing them out for. That was the only thing that could possibly deign releasing them.
Yeah, it's literally like that scene from Django Unchained where it's like, we all think that doing Primaris Marines was a nice idea, but not point at any fingers. It could have been done better.
It could have been a bit better. I think they might have helped out during Armageddon, just a bit,
or at least like in the context of how they presented them in lore. I mean,
that's part of the reasons I'm kind of mixed on them, because I think as the sculpts go, I like the sculpts. The classic tactical Marine. I'm not going to diss him, but they were getting a little bit old. So, the Primaris Marines definitely, beautified the sculpts, brought them up to scale, made them look good. But what's the line at almost beginning of almost every book? Like, forget the promise of, technology and progress, for so much has been forgotten, never to be relearned. Looks like there's some technology and progress going on, fellas. What happened? I thought we were forgetting all that stuff.
Yeah, it did cause at least a scandal for Call, but then again, not that much happened against him. There was like no civil war. So
I was talking to someone online once, and they mentioned how like there's actually a ton of hate against Call and Lore. I'm like, I'm sure there's passages about Tech Priest complaining, but doesn't seem to have affected his work very much. He seems to be just kind of getting away with everything he does.
So at least for me, that's like, hiccup lore. It's like, I don't think it shatters the whole setting, but I think it's a noticeable hiccup, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, you haven't ruined Warhammer with the Primaris Marines. I just wish you did it better.
Mm-hmm. But for something that could have been done better, actually, going back on fantasy, is that Warhammer Fantasy didn't have the most creative of endings, right? Because End Times was horribly written. Everyone can agree on that. So I can imagine that something like AOS didn't have the greatest first impressions on you, because it surely didn't for me for a while. Though I am curious as to your thoughts on that. Like when AOS came around, as soon as End Times finished.
Oh yeah. So when I got into Warhammer, I think AOS was entering its second edition. Because, like I said, I got into it. By the time I got into it, Total Warhammer 2, I think, was on the DLC, the Hunter or the Prophet and the Warlock. So it was a Ikit Claw and the Lizardman lore no one likes to play.
Mm-hmm.
So Age of Sigmar was already well into it, but I got into it through fantasy. So I was like, oh yeah, there's a tabletop stuff. I'm gonna get into it. And I looked it up and I'm like, yeah, all these characters, all the legendary lords you like, they're dead. Like, what the hell do you mean they're dead? So I looked into it and I was like, well, this sucks. Why would you do that? So I was a bit more bitter towards fantasy at first, because the setting that got me into Warhammer, GW took behind the shed and murdered. But I have definitely warmed up to AOS. I think there's a lot of things it has going for it.
Definitely.
As much as I do miss, I do prefer fantasy as my main setting. I know there was definitely a lot of things wrong with it on tabletop. It was a cumbersome system that could have definitely been fixed without murdering the setting. But AOS has streamlined things a lot, made it a lot easier to get into. And I think if I could say something controversial, if you don't mind me saying.
I'm not shy of saying controversial things on this series.
Then let me drop a bomb for you. I think AOS has the most creativity behind it of any of the Warhammer settings. And if you want me to be honest, I don't think it's even close.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
I think AOS has the most creativity behind it of any of the Warhammer settings, and I don't think it's close.
I get that.
Because like AOS, it's like, I swear they're shitting out a new faction every week, and all of them are so beautifully visually distinct. Like, you've got all the variety of Zells, the Idenith, the Lumineth Realm Lords, the Daughters of Cain. You've got
there's probably
Terradrin.
There's probably a fantasy fan listening to this, and he's having like the Jeffrey Dahmer meltdown for you saying it's like, no, I had Bretonnians. I'm a Bretonian, Dr. Pancreas. I'm a Bretonian.
Someone just put a hole in their screen.
Yeah, it's like you can smell the sweat coming off of them. Like anger.
I do genuinely feel that. Like, I feel like the AOS writers, at least for now, because it's still relatively new. 8 years old about by this point, but so relatively new. They don't have so many years of established canon and setting that they're shackled to. They're allowed to do a lot more of what they want. And like the new chaos models, the Warcry, all the different factions look astoundingly unique, and the sculpts are beautiful. Versus, like I said, I'm a history major. That's what I was teaching for a bit before I went to what I'm doing now, the YouTube stuff. I love all the historical crossover with fantasy, like, how it's the Holy Roman Empire, Stalia is like Spain, Cathay, China. I love that stuff, but just pure creativity. I do think AOS is just reigning supreme. I think the authors and the model designers and everyone are allowed to just go buck wild, and I think it's very benefited the setting.
Yeah, I remember like years ago when I was getting into Warhammer, I was watching this YouTube channel. I'm not sure if you ever heard of him. He's named General Lutz. But the whole point is that he was going over the Gotrek and Felix books, and he was doing an introduction to Warhammer Fantasy. And he said that even though it was very well written, it's also horribly generic. That, again, that's a little spicy to say, but it's like, well, is it wrong?
It's so it is. Warhammer Fantasy, I think, is my favorite fantasy setting. But
Yeah.
I'm like just period. But I'm also just self-aware enough to admit that a lot of it is. It was written, it was written by history nerds, which I think gives it a lot of background and stuff to strengthen it. But also, it is, yeah. I mean, the high. Have you read Lord of the Rings?
Who hasn't?
Yeah, it's like, hey, look, elves. You know elves. Lord of the Rings. Look at the elves.
Or it's
there
like,
are-
or it's like Kingdom of India. They just straight out use
yeah.
Gilgamesh. It's like that's shameful.
Oh yeah,
It'd be like if the
right.
it'd be like if the Empire were to use like straight out use Jesus and stuff like that. Like no Sigmar or anything like that.
Yeah, it's like I know, like the Japanese country is just named Nippon.
Napalm.
It's like that's not a fantasy name. That is just a name for Japan. Same with Cathay. It's just people aren't quite as familiar with Cathay being used as a term for China as opposed to Nippon being used for Japan.
Yeah.
Cathay is literally just people as that's been what people have called China historically in the real world. It's not a fantasy name they made up for fantasy China. It is just straight up another name for China that was used historically.
Or Arabia.
Oh yeah.
And the most lore they had is like from a Gotrek and Felix short story.
Oh yeah, and the lore that isn't from that was a cool short story. I thought that was really cool. It was an insight into the larger world, but also yeah, and then their other lore is the Sultan Jafar. Like that's not even history. You're just cribbing off Aladdin.
Yeah,
that's not world building. You watched Aladdin.
Yeah, guys. Or it's like England. They just straight out use the island of Bryn, but they name it Avion. The old name for Bryn.
Yeah, Albion. It's like
Albion. Thank you.
It's like not very inspired. There's a couple things.
It's original. It's very original than AOS.
Oh yeah, I'm an original setting. But yeah, there's a couple things it's done originally. Like I think Warhammer is actually the first like setting I think to make orcs green, which I know seems kind of goofy, but I mean, orcs in pretty damn near everything are at least somewhat green nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's like it could be like the Elder Scrolls, it's a bit more of a faded gray green, still green.
Like World of Warcraft wouldn't exist without Warhammer Fantasy,
Oh, absolutely. And of course the Skaven, my beloved. I'd say they're reasonably original.
Oh yeah,
at least
of
off
course.
the top of my head, I don't know anything. I guess the concept of rats being like evil, but I think GW's done quite a lot to make that its own thing with the Skaven.
Definitely, and
love the Skaven.
Yeah, the Skaven are probably the most original, fantasy theme from Warhammer Fantasy, and they're very creepy, and the idea of them, it's like horrifying, but also they're really funny when you read them in books.
Oh yeah, like every time Thanquol shows up, it is a gut buster. He is the funniest little goober to ever grace Warhammer. But then there's also, it's like, oh yeah, those are millions of evil, hateful rats just lurking under my city. That's a little spooky.
But also, they're horribly inconfident that when something goes wrong, they just blame everyone else.
Oh yeah, it is never your fault. It is always your underlings or superiors or equipment or something else.
Like the perfect incel.
It's I love that translates to tabletop too. It's like, hey, you can overcharge that rattling gun you got. Might blow up, but hey, it'll be funny if it does either way.
Yeah.
It's I wish there was a bit more stuff like that in Warhammer. The closest I can think of outside of this game is like the plasma guns where if you roll a 6, they blow up, or a 1, pardon me.
Hmm.
So I quite love that the army has the hey, you can wipe out a unit all at once, or you're just gonna blow up. That's really funny to me.
Of course. But I guess to backtrack, going back on AOS, right? So my story was like yours, where it's like I got into Warhammer Fantasy. I was about to collect Bretonnians. That might be a little spicy for you, but we'll talk about that later.
I guess everyone to their own.
Right. So, yeah, I saw AOS in its first edition form. I was like, okay, I don't know how to feel about this, because these do look like, Space Marines, like ground Marines, as Alpha Booza made his video on.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So for me, I found like the saying like almost half baked, and from what people said, the game wasn't that playable, because it was like they were releasing the lore or the rules as they go, fixing it up as they go.
I mean, yeah, I think when it launched, there were no point values for anything.
Yeah,
like that's a bit rough. Like I would always be down if someone wanted to try like a narrative game where there weren't too much in the way of point values and ever try to do special stuff. That'd be something I'm down for. I think you still need point values for the average game. GW, that was a bit of a flop.
right. So to me, it didn't have the greatest of starts, but as soon as they saw off the Idoneth, right, and then they saw off second edition, that is when I was hooked into this thing. I was like, okay, now I see the charm of this setting. And as they started like becoming more confident with it and starting to get more experienced and become more developed, and by the time of third edition, I was like, wow, this is pumpkin pie for me. I really like this setting.
Oh yeah, first of all, pumpkin pie, the best pie. Good, my
Yes.
man.
Very base.
But yeah, I think, and that's one of the things AOS has definitely done, is that every faction is allowed to shine, and it's not the 2-man band it is in like 40K, or it's like, it's Chaos and the Imperium, and everyone else is a side character, which is at least the vibe I get a lot of the time.
Of course.
Versus like in Age of Sigmar, of course, there's the Ground Marines, the Stormcast Eternals. When they showed up, they rocked the mortal realms and drove back chaos. But as time's going on, they've been hitting more and more stumbling blocks, and things are hard. They're still the poster boys, of course, but they aren't just sweeping by virtue of being the greatest of them all.
Mm-hmm.
Sigmar's chosen, who shall know no fear. They actually have genuine challenges to overcome. Versus, then there's like the Idoneth are like they shine on their own. The Lumineth come in and save the day, and now they're under siege a bit from the Oryx. Nagash, love me some Nagash. He is just the worst. He was for a while he was the biggest threat when he covered all of reality in death magic.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone gets their turn. And Chaos is coming a bit with Be'lakor and the Shadow Storms of Chaos. Everyone is allowed to win in Age of Sigmar at some point, and the flip side of that is everyone is allowed to lose, which I think is a major strength of AOS.
Because it's definitely like an example for me is that in the first book of Mortal Realms, it's no spoiler that Morathi becomes a pseudo god in this. By the end of it, I call her a pseudo chaos god because of her obvious resemblance and all that, right? But the whole point is that imagine if she was in 40K. If she was like a 40K character, her ritual would be like overturned and, nothing would be done. It's like, oh, here's this big thing that will happen. Oh, never mind. The Space Marines came.
It would have been like the Death Watch in Iliad and the
Yes.
NRA, where it's like, well, hey, look, this big ritual, your faction's going to do something. No, Space Marines are here. No fun allowed for you, non-Marine faction.
But at least for AOS, they were allowed to have fun, and it was really cool to see what they did. Like, I loved the first Multiple Realms book. It was so good.
Oh yeah, it's as the setting goes on, it's only getting better. I think I have no. This is just kind of a little theory I came up with the other day. I think every Warhammer setting needs a solid, really good video game to really bring it into people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Warhammer was, certainly, like 40K was certainly popular before Dawn of War, right? But I think so many people got into 40K through Dawn of War.
Definitely. So many people got into Space Marine. That's how I got into it.
Oh yeah, like Space Marine, games like that. And I think with Fantasy, definitely was later to the show, after the setting blew up. But Total Warhammer drew a ton of people to Fantasy, to the point that I genuinely think, at least briefly, Fantasy had a bit more public spotlight than 40K, just because of the Total War name, dragging it to the sun. So that brought a ton of people to Fantasy, and I think what will really bring a whole lot of people over Age of Sigmar and finally get it past like the bad name it's had since the start would be a killer video game for it. So I'm kind of really hoping that the new RTS game coming out for it could be that game.
Yeah, Realms of Ruin. Yeah,
Realms of Ruin. I'm hoping that'll, if not be like a amazing 10 out of 10 game, I'm hoping that'll at least be the thing that kickstarts Age of Sigmar's golden age.
Yeah, because I remember this YouTube channel. I can't say his name top of my head, but he does like these very insightful videos about Warhammer, or about the video games at least. And he does like 2-part series on Dawn of War. Porsche, I can't say his name. I can't look it up right now, but he does his review on the like beta play of Realms of Ruin, and from what he says, it's like, wow, this game looks very promising then, if it's like impressing him this much. So it's like, I think Realms of Ruin has that opportunity, and I think it will, have that shine to it.
I'm certainly hoping it does, both for Age of Sigmar's sake and RTS games in general. I think RTS games are in a bit of a lull, so I'm hoping that hey, maybe this will be the banger that'll help out both Age of Sigmar and the genre.
But it's like, and this might be look spicy for me to say, but it's like, I found some people online, mean people online who are not up there. Shocking. But the whole point is that there's some people who, if you try to tell them about why you like AOS, like, oh, I like the books, or I like the models, or I like playing the game, you bring any of those justifications for why you like the setting, they'll say, that's not an argument. Or it's like, no. It's like, well, what do you mean, no? It's like, no, that doesn't count. That doesn't justify it.
It's like, what do you mean it doesn't count? It's like I'm defending it. You're just saying everything that's coming out of my mouth isn't an argument. It's like, what do you mean? I just said I like the models and the lore. How is that not an argument?
It's like, not an argument. Fantasy's original. Fantasy had Knight on horse.
Yeah, it's I do get it to some extent, where it's like, again, the first edition, like early Age of Sigmar, wasn't great. The end times are horrible. Like there's no saving the end times. As much as Cetra does not serve as perhaps the coolest line ever delivered in Warhammer, the rest of the end times are still horrible despite that. So I get why people have biases against it. Like, at the end of the day, as much as I wish it didn't, it killed fantasy. But it's still its own thing. It's cool. Like, it has more than enough merit on its own. It's not like I don't know what else to say other than like it has merit on its own. I don't think you should just ignore it because it's like, oh, fantasy. Like, I love fantasy the most too, but that doesn't mean Age of Sigmar is inherently bad anymore.
It's like their only argument is to paint AOS as it was in first edition. And it's like, well, we're far from the first edition, dude. Or at least like the first year of first edition. because in first edition we got things like Jars of Cain and the Idoneth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's moved on. We're in third edition now.
And it's like, nope. It's like, what do you mean no? It's like, nope.
If you're just gonna say no, I guess I'm done here too. I'm gonna go have fun with Age of Sigmar.
And they'd be like, I won the argument.
It's like, okay, sure, you won the argument because I'm done arguing. I'm gonna go have fun.
And it's like, no fun allowed.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm actually. Oh, what's up?
when you're having ice cream, you don't put any sauce or sprinkles or put it in a cone. You just get plain vanilla in a cup.
Yep. It's like I'm sorry. You have fun over there. I'm gonna go have fun over here then.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually painting some Lumineth Realm Lords right now.
Awesome.
Well, not as of this moment. I'm not sitting in front of my monitor painting, but that's what I'm working on at the moment. Some Venari Blade Lords.
And funny you bring that up. That's exactly what I was going to bring up next. Actually,
Oh.
If I'm correct, the Realm Lords are your favorite elf faction within all of Warhammer. If I'm right, compare them to Fantasy or 40k. Would that be right?
I need to think on that question. I definitely like them a lot. They definitely have. When they were introduced, they took the mortal realms by storm. Where they show up, chaos is just simply not a problem anymore. Purified. Love my high elves 2.0. Teclis with his moon spirit little thing. The models are gorgeous. I love their lore. My favorite, I don't. They're picking my favorite among the elves. That's the real hard part. Age of Sigmar easily favorite. I don't know I don't know who I would say my favorite the elf subfaction is for all of Warhammer though.
Maybe that was a bit much for me to say, or at least in the context of AOS, they are your favorite elves within that.
Oh yeah, in the context of AOS, they're my favorite elves, and I think just for Warhammer in general, it's like I think I just like all of them for different reasons. I don't know if I could say one is completely my favorite.
Of course,
but they've each got something about them that I like. But that being said, Lumineth Realm Lords definitely do love them.
And I remember in your video about them, it's like you describe them as high elves, right?
So they're the highest of high elves.
Though I was thinking, would it also be appropriate to call them light elves, like from Norse mythology?
I think that'd be very appropriate. I mean, when they first touched down, a lot of citizens mistake them for just beings of pure light. So, light elves definitely would not be inaccurate. That's a very good term for them.
Mm-hmm. And I really do like also their design of the armor and the whole like you said, the lore about them, right? Compare them to the high elves from Fantasy. I think they really did a good way on doing something that's familiar, but also something that has its own identity, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing Age of Sigmar is good with. It's like you can tell what their origin from the Asur, the high elves of Fantasy, but they're also not just the high elves. It's they're very much their own thing. They've got their own shine coming through, and that makes them stand out.
Mm-hmm. And even about Teclis as well, there's something I'm going to bring up to you actually. I'm a bit opinionated on his model. Like, I think his face looks a little messed up because I think it looks too aged. I don't know. I guess he's old, but I don't know. I think his face looks just a little messed up. But
it does look a little bit constipated.
But then again, that's only 10% of the actual model. The actual model itself is mostly the Sphinx. Because that is basically what it is. It is basically a Sphinx.
You're paying for a Sphinx with an elf on top.
It's like, look at it. It's a Sphinx, guys. Come on. So that's Teclis' model. But of course, later on, we're going to get them all for Tyrion. Of course, that's going to happen eventually. So this is something I'm going to ask you. Do you think when his maul comes out, do you think it should have like the Phoenix design, or should have something more connecting with the actual Realm Lord's, range? Because the actual range within the Realm Lords don't have like the Phoenix design as the High Elves do. Because what I'm thinking, so what I'm thinking is that maybe you should have the Phoenix like armor, because it would like, signify him as the Phoenix King of all elf kind within AOS. But I don't know. I'm interested in what you have to think.
So I think I'll start with what I don't want. I don't want him to just be on a horse again. They already have that. Lyrior Uthrale. That is a one hell of a name to say. But he's like Tyrion 2.0, like mortal Tyrion 2.0. He's Tyrion's kind of like his voice in the mortal realms. So I don't think they should just stick him on a horse again like they did in fantasy. As for, I want them to emphasize his, like, Teclis is the mage. I want them to emphasize Tyrion's the guy who hits things with stick. For like a mount, I generally don't know. I think a Phoenix would be cool.
I definitely think a Phoenix, or at least something, an AOS version of a Phoenix of Light, maybe.
Yeah, I think that now that you say that, I think I could definitely get down with that. It's a Phoenix, like the Teclis is the Moon Spirit, Selenor is a Sphinx, but it's got like its own unique flair relative to the Lumineth that makes it stand out. Like, hey, I know yes, this is deep down a Phoenix, but it's also growing beyond that. It's its own Lumineth thing, which I think would be really cool. Because off the top of my head, I'm not sure if Tyrion has any spirit he's bonded to, like Teclis has. He's kind of bonded to that the Lumineth spirit that it taught him how to reinvent Lumineth society. So Teclis has that. I could definitely be. I think now that you bring it up and I'm thinking about it, Phoenix would definitely be some worthy of Tyrion. I just wonder if I don't know. Just part of me wonders if maybe he should be like a bigger model on foot, but I think a mount would definitely be more fitting. To emphasize he's the god of the Lumineth, because I know both Tyrion and Teclis are the gods of the Lumineth, but from my understanding, Tyrion is like the incarnate of light, as it were. He's the main god that is connected to Heish. So I think something grand's definitely got to be done with him.
Definitely, and something that looks like it'll be a pain in the ass to assemble on the tabletop.
Oh yeah, putting together, that is, if I had to give the Lumineth one critical flaw, it would be putting together some of their minis can be a pain. I spent a solid 30 minutes trying to get something out of Teclis's face, I think, and I just could not make it work. So yeah, I'm sure when Tyrion comes, it'll be A, glorious to behold, and B, a pain in the ass to make stick.
And this is something actually I think I could have fixed for AOS, talking on elves, right? Alariel, of course, from the Sylvaneth.
Yeah, Alariel the Everqueen. I guess now she's just kind of Alariel.
But I guess the whole point of me bringing this up, in End Times, if I'm correct, she basically merged with the Wood Elf Queen Ariel, if I'm right.
She became just pretty much the incarnate of Isha and life, double dipping.
Right. So looking into it though, because she's supposed to be the new goddess of the new wood elves, right? Would have been made more sense if they used her Ariel name, because Ariel's more of a wood elf. Well, she is a wood elf character, so should have been a thing where Ariel took more presence within the body of Alariel. You see what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah.
I just think it'd be more appropriate.
Probably would, and I think part of the reason is like I think Alariel might have been a bit more popular of a character, which influenced it. And I think the other half of it was when they merged in fantasy, she was still Alariel, so they just kind of stuck with what they already had. I think it might have been part of the reason why she's still Alariel rather than Ariel. Probably would have been a lot more fitting since the Sylvaneth are like the tree spirits and kind of the wood elves a little bit. So Ariel probably would have been a bit more fitting, or at least something more like it, but I guess Alariel's what we got.
Of course. But then there comes something that you think cannot be fixed, and it's something that I think you have like the most rage towards, because that was one hell of a video. You just don't like Bretonnians, if that's correct. That's something you've been denying for so long.
I'm definitely not their number one fan. That is to be sure.
You horse sodomizers. It's like that. That's not like it came from the heart.
It came from the heart of many a defeated Total War battle. I'm not a fan of their lore, as at least where it stands. Some of their older lore, before they did their own little retcon, I was a little bit more charitable towards. As they stand, not the biggest fan of their lore, not the biggest fan of their play style. Really about the only thing I can respect is knights look cool. I can't deny that. Knights are cool. And aside from that, not a fan.
Okay. So I will say that I like Bretonnia. Like, aesthetically, I think they're really interesting. I do like the name of the nation. And of course, I like how they're more, I do like the French aesthetic that they have. And again, the presentation I really like, but I do admit they're not original IP at all, because them just straight out worshiping the Lady of the Lake is shameful for in terms of originality.
You ever heard of King Arthur? There you go.
Yeah, but I won't say I'm a fanboy, because I have some self-respect, because when you're a fanboy, it's you're like, no, I hate AOS because there's no Bretonnians.
Yeah,
it's like you see what I'm going at.
Yeah, I get that. You're not gonna spit's not gonna start flying because someone brought up Bretonnia in Age of Sigmar.
Because you can like My Little Pony, but don't be a brony, because there's no self-respect there.
Oh, good lord. I've seen the early internet.
Yeah, it's like
some dark stuff.
Like people put their Bretonnian Knight in a jar.
He's guarding a different lake.
Yeah, it's like this. Oh, this lake smells like cheese.
Oh lord, is that foul? I'm definitely not taking that water from the Lady of the Lake.
And then again, you use the berserkers when describing them. It's like, that's perfect.
I did do that. I did in fact use the berserk horse, who needs no introduction.
I'm a Bretonnian,
Look,
I'm a Bretonnian. Let me show you how we mount horse.
Oh, good lord. Oh man, that's yeah. No, I'm not a fan of the horse fuckers.
They feed the horses better than they do the peasants.
Quite significantly better. The peasant gets his bowl of gruel for the day, and the horse gets a finely prepared vegetarian meal.
Because that's where most of our military is.
And horse. I don't know. I'm just saying they should pick up some of that gunpowder the Empire's got going.
It's like you are right, and that the northern parts of Bretonnia, it's like, what, they're not going to get influenced by the Empire at all? Are you guys serious on that? Because there was a little scandal too in Kislev, in the Gotrek and Felix books, where the southern parts of Kislev were inspired by the Empire, because they do things like wear their luxuries and gunpowder weaponry. Mm-hmm. If I'm right, yeah.
Yeah, and the northern parts, closer to the Chaos Wastes, where it's a lot harsher. They're like those our southern brethren have gone soft, like those Imperials.
Mm-hmm. It's like you're telling me no one from north of Bretonnia would do the same?
None of them smuggled in a handgun. Feel like that'd be helpful. It's there's every now and then I will give them some credit. There's some cool bits that sneak in, like how they the Bretonnian Navy has cannons, because gunpowder's not allowed in Bretonnian soil, but boats aren't on the soil now, are they? So every now and then there's cool stuff like that, and I think it's in one of the roleplay supplements. I don't remember what they're officially called. It's Robin Hood. The official name I don't remember, but it's Robin Hood.
Okay.
They've got some more leeway because they're fighting against Bretonnian tyranny. So I think they can use like firearms and such if they really want to. But just overall, I'm just not the faction didn't click for me. And I kept losing to them in Total War, so it went from not click to hatred.
And despite my jokes, I do find that click in Bretonnia. Like, I have their army book, and I really did enjoy reading about them. Again, I like them, but I'm not the Brony equivalent.
I get you.
Right, but at least that's just for me. But I do have fun poking fun of the fanboys like you do, like a fanboy, femboy. What's the difference?
Ugh,
The fanboy, femboy.
Strongest Bretonnian male versus the weakest Imperial male.
Yeah.
It's it's, and I should say while I'm here, it's again, I as much as I made a whole video about how they suck, and they do suck. Again, I'm not here to genuinely judge anyone's taste in faction. I'm just throwing some shade for the fun of it. I would never, if someone rocks up to a Bretonnian army in the old world, I'm not going to sit there and be like, yeah, you're a lesser human being. It's like, it's your army, man. Paint what you want.
Yeah, you're curve stomping them, and it's like, whoa, dude, I'm just joking around.
Yeah. It's like, I'm here to have fun. And honestly, I think I don't know, I think it's fun to get into that spirit of, I think your army sucks. Let's prove it on the tabletop.
And you got your ass kicked. Or at least in Total War, you said, yeah?
Yeah, I have not played against Bretonnia on the tabletop since fantasy minis and rule books are a bit harder to come by, especially to play a game with. But maybe when the old world comes out, if I either rebase some Skaven or get myself some Imperials proper, maybe it'll be time to once and for all settle that grudge and throw down with them on the tabletop. And I don't know. I think it's just fun to have, like, I guess, rivalry, for lack of a better term, just like some shit talking between people for their armies.
Yeah, because I have friends who do that all the time on a mere basis of where they're from.
Like it's, I don't know. Like, don't hate someone for the army they're playing. That's definitely way too much. But like, just throw a little bit of shade at them. Have some fun with it.
And we're definitely having fun with what we're doing.
Yeah. Don't sit down and just be like, we'll have a nice clean match of fun. Like, no, I want to hear some insults. I want to hear about how my army sucks, and I'm going to tell you how your army sucks.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you.
Down.
I'm going to tell you how you sodomize that horse well.
Yep, and then you can make fun of me for having to rely on cannons. You know what? We'll see who's better on the tabletop. That'll be the final arbitrator.
But with all seriousness though, when Old World was revealed, right, and they revealed like Tomb Kings versus Bretonnia, was that not like the greatest of things to you? It's like,
It's, yeah, as much as I wish the Empire was getting love. First of all, love the Tomb Kings again. Cetra does not serve. Tomb Kings are awesome. Again, talking about originality. You ever heard of Ancient Egypt? There you go. But I do love the Tomb Kings. And Bretonnia, it's at a certain point it was like, you know what? Fantasy's coming back. I'm happy with it. And if any faction, did Bretonnia even get an 8th edition rulebook?
They didn't. Like,
I would say,
as far as I
so
know,
if
it's like that one army book that they had like years ago. The
Mhm.
one with the famous artwork on them. I think that was
Oh, yeah.
their only physical printed book for like years.
Yeah, so I think that might be 7th or maybe even 6th edition. I'd have to double check because off the top of my head I can't remember. But so at a certain point, I sat down, like I had to think about, you know what, if any faction really needs to come out of the gate strong, probably the Bretonnians. I know that even towards the end of the fantasy, like I think out of every faction in the end times, I think they got the least amount of complaints about getting rid of them because they stagnated more than any other. So you know what, fair's fair. There's my olive branch to all the Bretonnian fans. I'm glad you're getting your update.
I do like their paladin though, and the knight standard bearer. Like, I really do like how they did those models. It's like, wow, this is a glow up, I think.
Oh yeah, and I admitted that in my video. They have drip. They look cool. Knights are cool. What can I say?
But then it comes to the point where the fanboy goes, you see, Bretonnia has knight on horse. Look how simple this model is. But look at AOS. AOS has a manticore. You know,
You say them
sees a Sigmar.
Repeat that again because I think the Manticore is a lot cooler. I think the general on the Griffin, or Carl Franz with the serial numbers filed off.
Yeah,
that's one of the funniest things to me when like Age of Sigmar. Either you can tell it's a named character, like they call him Free Guild General on Griffin, right?
mm-hmm.
But
it's Carl Franz.
It has his name. Like you rotate the model around on the web store. The coat of arms has his name, like as part of the molding of the model. It says Carl Franz. I know who that is. Games Workshop. You can't hide it from me. Or like my favorite is when they have one of the models that's still on a square base on the web store.
Yeah,
it's not too many for the most part. They've rebased them for circles. But if you look hard enough, like one of the some of the Beastmen models. Still on square bases. I'm like, I know what system that came from Games Workshop.
We know what it is.
I know what you're hiding.
And then they'll say something like, why is there a human on a manticore? Manticore's just chaos. Why is there this manticore in the, faction of order? And it's like, well, dude, there's no lore yet.
Because it's cool.
And it's like, just to briefly talk on that. I think that Manticore, I really do like it. I imagine for lore, what if it's like some distant ancestor from its original chaos, forefather,
Yeah, it could be. I mean, the Age of Sigmar, I know.
Like bred out of chaos or something like that, or eventual evolution of it.
Like, and I know there's fantasy, like Alariel was able to purify chaos. Like she 1v1 Slanesh herself.
Power word kill. Power word what?
Yeah. But like Alariel in old fantasy 1v1 like Slanesh herself for the soul of a champion, and Alariel was winning until she let go of the guy. Then he kind of exploded. But and Gal Maraz, I know it. If you hit someone hard enough with it, it purifies them of chaos corruption.
Mm-hmm.
So. It could very much be like, hey, yeah, the chaotic corruption was bred out of it, like via magic.
Yeah, and if I'm correct, all creatures in general from fantasy, like griffins and manticores, let's put on the bookmark on the griffin. Is a griffin itself technically a creature made by chaos? It's not a chaos creature, but it was something created out of the magic of it. From the mutations of it.
I would need to check specifically if it's I'm not sure off the top of my head if they're from chaos. Like I know there are fantasy creatures that aren't connected to chaos in the fantasy, like dragons, for example. Like they're not connected to chaos at all. They're just magic creatures. They were always there in the Warhammer world.
Okay.
So some creatures definitely like are just magical creatures. There's chaos isn't involved. But other ones also certainly do have some, at least a little bit of chaotic influence in there. So I would need to check, because they could just be fantastical wild animals. But I'm not sure on that.
Because I think I read something about that, or at least maybe saw a glance of that from a wiki page like years ago, but I don't know. But one more thing about Bretonnia, just on the whole subject of originality, and this creature has a manticore, this guy has a horse. For the old world, how would you feel about this to spice up the range of Bretonnia? So I was thinking, let's say there's this Grail Knight, or maybe there's this priest of the Lady of the Lake. Let's say they have blessed a creature that's the equivalent of the Tarrasque, or straight out the Tarrasque, a chaos creature that has found its way into Bretonnia, but instead of slaying it, they were to purify it, like in the actual mythology, where it was like some kind of nun that blessed the Tarrasque, and it became a holy creature in a sense, or at least it became docile. So imagine this, Tarrasque being relied upon by a Bretonnian, Grail Knight, or some kind of like very special priest. What do you think of that?
I think that would definitely have the potential to maybe look a lot more favorable upon them. Especially, it would bring a lot of diversity to the models on the tabletop. Because that is another thing. Why I'm not the biggest fan of Bretonnia. It's like it's knights, it's more knights. And you got some dirty people on foot. That would definitely make them stick out a lot more on the tabletop and give them some cool monstrous stuff. Because as it stands, it's like, all right, I like knights. What else do you have for me? And then they unload 50 more knights on the table. I'm like, all right, I'm a little bit less interested in the knights now. It seems like you only have one thing up your sleeve, and it's a knight.
But then it's like, oh, here's a Pegasus, and here's a hippogriff.
Yeah. Well, the hippogriffs aren't even in tabletop. I think that was some Total War invented, gave to them.
Though there was au contraire though, because in the actual army book, you can mount a lord kind of character on a hippogriff, because especially the king himself of Bretonnia, which is basically just Lionheart. It is Lionheart. He does ride a hippogriff.
Pardon me, then. I have flubbed.
Even though compared to the Griffin of the Empire, it's horribly aged, or it really needs plastic surgery.
It's certainly no Deathclaw. That is to be sure.
Yeah, Deathclaw. It's like the gravity of Deathclaw. It's not comparable to the scrawny hippogriff.
Yeah, one of them's definitely been taking their protein shakes, and it is not the Bretonnian one.
But with that, I think it's an appropriate time to ask you some questions people have asked of us. If you're interested,
I am of course interested. Let's hear them.
Sure thing. I'm pulling them up now. Some of these questions were questions I've already asked you and stuff we already talked about, so I guess I'll, push them away because we already talked about them. But here's an interesting one. Ask him, what is the best cult in the Empire besides the cult of Sigmar, and why is it the cult of Tull?
That's Chrono, isn't it?
Yes, Chrono.
I do like Tull, good old Marcus Kruber, the god of nature of the Empire. I do like he's I like when there's emphasis like that on the not super major gods. Obviously Sigmar is the big guy in the Imperial pantheon.
He is Big J within the pantheon.
Yeah, and I do like that it's not like the Imperium where you have Big E. It's like you got some variety in fantasy. And Tull's cool. I've played enough Vermintide. I gotta give at least some respect to Marcus Kruber. But I don't know. I gotta be honest. If it weren't for Sigmar, I think I might be an Ulrican. I like the Winter Wolf.
Definitely, and I just
got werewolves.
I just thought, what if Ulrich were to make an appearance in AOS?
I would be very happy. That would make me very happy, especially because he does actually do some stuff in the end times. He chews Teclis out for his BS after Teclis stole his flame to revive Tyrion.
Mhm.
So then again, he is a god. You could probably make it. Funny enough, him getting depowered might actually be camouflage as a sort, because if he was more full power, the Chaos Gods might have snacked on him. But since Teclis ripped his flame out of Middenheim, maybe Elric was a bit more on the down low, and maybe he'll make a bit of a cameo in AOS. I'd like that a lot.
Yeah, like not a new army, but a unit of werewolves, or the AOS version of werewolves, who serve alongside with either Stormcast Eternals or the Cities of Sigmar, you know?
Oh, that'd be sick. Especially because where else but Gotrek and Felix that's actually got some backing in some of the lore. Ulrich has some... I think what exactly they are isn't clear, whether they're blessed on him or somehow descended from him. But Gotrek and Felix encounter some werewolves. Gotrek is a dwarf, so he was trudging through the snow the whole time trying to catch up.
Got exposed to some wolfsy.
Oh, good Christ.
In Turkish lore, a guy got some wolfsy and he became king of the Turks.
I don't know what happened, but there were werewolves.
Werewolves in Turkey, but okay. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be something cool. Like, kind of unrelated, but it'd be cool to see a Turkish equivalent in
Oh
the
no,
old
that
world.
is like that did actually happen, and or supposedly is a Turkish mythology where it's like, you know, before they became Muslims, where it's like the guy found a wolf girl, let's call it a werewolf girl, and he became the king of the Turks because he got her preggers.
Is that really a thing?
Oh, that's the very simplified version of it, but basically he found some wolfsy.
Huh. I did not know that. Would have to... Huh. I'd have to check that out. I guess, I mean, what the founding of the Roman Empire Rome was two kids sucking on werewolf titties, so hardly the most out there mythology in the world.
Yeah, Homelander drinking his milk, you know.
Oh, good Christ. Thank you, the boys. Very cool.
Okay, and here's a question from that said Turk, actually, the guy who told me about that mythos.
What's he got?
So, as an elf simp, what are your thoughts on the Ephraim storyline and character?
Oh, I wish they did more with it.
Oh, yeah,
wish
they
they did
really
anything with it.
needed to do more.
It would be so cool to see an army of like ghostly Eldar.
Yes.
Because I know there's like the Wraith units, which are the spirits of Eldar implanted in the Wraithbone constructs. But it'd be so cool to see like just more straight up like ghost Eldar. Like Iniad could bring like spirits from the War in Heaven between the Necrons, like ancient Eldar spirits.
Yes.
Or something like that. That would be super cool. But unfortunately, Space Marines were involved, and the Eldar are not allowed to win ever. That is simply not allowed in 40k. The Eldar cannot win. I think it's in like a contract clause somewhere. If the Eldar are going to win, don't make them win.
Yeah, it's a storyline that bit them in the butt, especially like the opportunities that they had with Ephraim. But after 8th edition, it's like, where did she go?
Yeah, she's gone, is she? Yeah, especially because one of the 5 crone swords they need to really empower Iniad. Slanesh has it. It's like, well, great. What do we do now?
God, do it over again.
Yep, we need time
you
for
see what
retcon.
I mean? Yeah, that really bit them in the butt. It's like, Dusky, I'm not sure if you know, she's a huge, she loves Ephraim, and she ships her with Gilliman so much. It's like, she described her as the Cleopatra to the Imperium of Man, and there's so much they could have done with that, like Imperium of Man, Eldar alliance. But after 8th edition, everything just went back to how it was, and it's like, well, that felt pointless. Games Workshop, what did you do?
Sounds like you wrote a whole lot of paragraphs that lead to nothing. Thank you. Very cool.
A fireworks show that was just like nothing.
It was 3 fireworks and then it abruptly ended. Yeah, I wish I wish they did anything with it that amounted to something substantial, I guess would be my answer to the Yvraine storyline. I wish it went somewhere other than, Prince Uriel died and then Yvraine bringed it back, and that's the end of it. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Boo.
Yeah, what a showing by Games Workshop. Yeah, there's my answer. Please do something with it.
And here's one I think you'll be very interested in. If the old world starts releasing novels, what or who should they be about?
Ooh. One I would like to see is Thorgrim Grudgebearer. His earliest days. That would be cool.
That'd be nice.
Beyond that, something also about Magnus the Pious, because he definitely got around. He obviously would have had some contact with the dwarfs when they were fighting chaos, and of course, he's the one who instituted the colleges of magic in the Empire alongside good old Teclis.
Mhm.
So some more stuff about Magnus the Pious. He's a the Magnus who actually didn't do anything wrong. That'd be some cool stuff to see from GW, and beyond that, I'm not sure. I'd be pretty open to anything else beyond that. Tomb King's always fun to read about them. I know the Skaven are kind of on the down low in the setting, both historically and from what it sounds like GW is planning.
Mhm.
But some more rat stuff is always cool. Love me rats. And beyond that, I don't know. I'd be open to see just what there is, what they have to bring to the table. So I think those 2 big ones, Magnus and Thorgrim. And beyond that, into whatever. Oh, maybe another one about Teclis himself going to the Empire to set that stuff up.
Yes, that'd be cool. And here's a book series I think you might be interested in if they were to do something with this. So currently in this timeline, there's a civil war with the 3 emperors within the Empire. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the Age of the 3 Emperors, I believe.
Yeah.
Era. One of those words that means time period.
So imagine like a book series where it's like a Game of Thrones, War of the Roses type story with the 3 emperors. How would you feel about that?
Ooh, that'd be some cool stuff.
That'd be very cool. It's just don't drag it like the Horus Heresy, guys. If it's just like 4 books, that'd be good. Don't make like 50 plus.
Yeah, and then when they get to Magnus the Pious taking power, don't make another 8-book mini-series just about that.
Mm-hmm.
I know how it ends. You don't need to drag it out.
It's like, don't try to subvert expectations. If it's okay if it's predictable. It becomes a problem when you try to like go, psych, here's a twist. It's like,
it's like there's fleshing something out, and then there's just bloating it.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like this is so much unnecessary stuff, especially because we know it's going to happen. Like with Sanguinius is going to die, the Emperor is going to kind of die, and Horus is really going to die. I know what's going to happen.
It's like it comes to a point where you're putting too much spice on food where it's not actually food at all. It's something you can't eat, like physically.
You've handed me a plate of pepper.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely something else I'd be interested in. But yeah, with like you said, the caveat that GW doesn't fill it up with bloat.
Here's a fun little question here, actually. Has there been a particular tabletop defeat that has stuck with you?
Yeah, the first one I ever played against Khorne. You're wondering why there's another one like the Bretonnian one that just says Khorne armies suck. That's that one will stick with me forever. That's the secret. If you're wondering whether or not an army gets a do or don't, if I lose to them on tabletop before I cover them, they get a "this army sucks" video.
Yeah.
But that one, it was the first time I played. Wasn't super into exactly what I was doing because again, first game of Warhammer. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm rolling dice, and beyond that, I'll see what happens. And I thought I was gonna be clever. I tried to blow up some fire transport with my fire dragons, the Eldar anti-tank unit, and through a series of bad rolls and underwhelming rolls, tank did not blow up when it had a bunch of Khornate berserkers in it.
Mhm.
And then they all got out and proceeded to butcher me. And I tried to do some a fancy deep strike with my Wraith Guard to get behind enemy lines. All that ended up happening was the Wraith Guard killed some worthless cultists. Did not amount to much.
Yeah.
Although I will say, Eldrad held out for 2 rounds against like 12 Khornate berserkers.
Wow.
So you know what? Eldrad he killed like 6 of them too. So you know what? Eldrad put in the moves that day.
And I'll tell you this story not because it was a particular defeat, but it's more like because all this army has now scarred me. It's more because the players kind of weirded me out because it's like the typical bad game experience, and it was my first ever game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's this guy, like I was playing this one guy, or he was on my side, but every 10 minutes he would go outside to have a smoke break, right? And then later, his parents actually came into the store and asked, "Hey, honey, do you want us to pick you up later or soon?" And he's like, "Go the fuck away, mom!" And it's like, "Okay, sweetie."
That would make anything awkward.
Yeah, it's like, and it's more like, okay, this is the typical bad gamer experience.
Like I just want to hang out, man. I don't want to be here for the family drama.
Or it's like, dude, come on, let's play the game. It's like,
yeah,
I'm trying to do this. Come on. And it's like, oh, okay.
Bro, it's been 5 minutes. Put the cigarette away.
That was my I technically did lose against orcs, but I think it's more because that stuck out because whenever I think of losing against orcs, I think of that scene.
Oh yeah, it's forever connected with "Get the fuck out of my room, mom."
It's not even in a room; it's like in a game store.
The game store. Yeah. Oh god, I could not imagine yelling that to my mother in public.
But then again, in that particular store, it was not a big store. It was more like a hall, and it was just me, him, and a manager.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a nice bit of awkward to stew in for the next however long the game goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was ugh. I didn't have that for my first experience. I just got wiped.
But with that, I think we've reached the end of the episode. Is there anything you would like to say before we call it an end?
No, just thanks for having me on, man. It was a whole lot of fun, and yeah, always a pleasure to talk shop about Warhammer for a bit. And yeah, this was a fun time, man.
Yeah, definitely, and I definitely had great fun today. And I think this is like a good start to a good day.
Oh yeah, today's I got a good feeling about today. It's gonna be a good one. But yeah, it was good stuff.
Yeah, and thank you all for the birthday wishes. And with all that, I'll see you all again next time. See you around, everybody.
Everyone.